Hey everyone, Nick Espinoza, your Chief Security Fanatic here, and today is Sunday, so we are doing Breaches of the Week as always. And before we begin, obviously, I'd like to thank the following people that sent me messages, tagged me, whatever they did to get me this. It always helps. And if you have information for me on a data breach, please feel free to hit me up and I'll give you a shout out as well. And so with that, Jason Dance, Neville Goodalls, David Walker, Barrett Peterson, and Jacqueline Wolf. Guys, thank you very much for this information. It is always appreciated. And with this, let's start with an update for NASA. Now, if you recall last week, I mentioned that NASA's one of their major contractors, DMI, was breached, and their breach included information about NASA and a whole bunch of their other customers. Now we have an update on this because we know that the Doppelpayer ransomware gang just published a list of 2,583 servers and workstations that they are currently holding hostage from this attack. Now, this cyber criminal gang basically says the devices in question were part of DMI's internal network, and at that level of machines that have been hit and compromised, they clearly got pretty deep into DMI's infrastructure, and so we're going to see where that goes. But this is not just going to affect NASA and DMI, but obviously their other customers as well. Moving on, let's head to the state of Kentucky here in the United States, and we have an update on their data breach that I actually reported on, in the last few weeks or so. Now, the first attack occurred between April 1st and April 22nd, and then a second attack occurred in mid-May. In both cases, the attackers used stolen credentials to gain access to these accounts. Now, in the first attack, legitimate credentials were used to gain access to the Staywell system in Kentucky. Staywell is a third-party vendor that manages a well-being and incentive portal for health plan members. And we now know that the state of Kentucky has lost $107,000 as a result of these breaches thus far. And if there's anything else, I'll obviously let you guys know. Moving on, let's talk about Honda. Yes, the Honda, maker of cars and motorcycles and lawnmowers and a whole bunch of other stuff. And to quote the Japanese car maker, Honda can confirm that a cyber attack has taken place on the Honda network. It also added that the problem was affecting its ability to access its computer servers, use email, and otherwise make use of its internal systems. To quote Honda again, there was also an impact on production systems outside of Japan. Work is being undertaken to minimize the impact and to restore full functionality of production, sales, and development activities. Now, it also added that the virus had spread through its network, but did not provide further details. Honda appears, though, apparently through research, to have left open public RDP or remote desktop protocol access to servers or infrastructure, which is a very easy target for attackers. I can't tell you how many times we've seen exploit framework hit through open remote desktop protocols, or we've demonstrated it, to clients, or I've done it on stage. So it is a huge, huge issue, that we have with remote desktop, and hopefully Honda is going to get that cleared up. Moving on, let's head to the city of Florence, Alabama, and I find this to be very interesting because in late May, basically Brian Krebs of Krebs on Security alerted officials in Florence, Alabama, that their information technology basically had been infiltrated by attackers who specialize in deploying ransomware. Apparently, this fell on deaf ears because on Friday, June 5th, the intruders hit that network deploying ransomware and demanding $300,000 worth of Bitcoin. City officials are now saying that they plan to pay the ransom demand in the hopes of keeping the personal data of their citizens off the internet, which quite frankly isn't necessarily stopping these people from doing that anyway. But, the fact of the matter remains, if Brian Krebs tells you you're about to get hit, you're about to get hit. We should all listen and read Brian Krebs. Moving on, let's talk about Babylon Health out of the UK. They suffered a data breach involving confidential patient information with users of its GP video consultation app basically being allowed to see other patients' appointments. Now, this breach emerged when one of its users discovered that they had access to video recordings of other patients' consultations. Babylon later said that a small number of its UK users could see each other's sessions and that the problem was limited to a software error and not a malicious attack. So hopefully Babylon Health has corrected that issue and it is locked down, and hopefully it is not open to malicious attack. Moving on, I'm going to talk about a company called Edesur SA. This is one of the companies that belongs to Enel Argentina. Now, they operate basically in the energy distribution system of this in the city of Buenos Aires, meaning they do energy distribution for Buenos Aires in Argentina. Like Honda, they had an exposed RDP server, and they got hit with the Econs ransomware, which is a new ransomware that we are seeing move around industrial control systems and all of that. So that is a huge issue for them as well, and hopefully they'll get that straightened out. I don't have much more on that, that much at the moment is what I'm trying to say here. And moving on, let's talk about the city of Knoxville, Tennessee. They were forced to shut down their entire computer network following a ransomware attack that took place overnight and targeted the city's offices. This is overnight, about a week ago or so. Computers on the Knoxville networks were encrypted over that night, with the attack starting around 4:30 a.m. on June 11th, and first noticed by the fire department, apparently that was up at that time. And to quote the city of Knoxville, no credit card information is stored by the city, so individuals who have made any online reservations of city facilities are not believed to be at risk. And so hopefully Knoxville, Tennessee will be able to clean that up pretty quickly. Moving on, we're going to be talking about a cloud-based app called Inventory Hive. This apparently is a property inventory service for realtors out of the UK, but I believe it's used globally. This was apparently leaking members' personal information, including their name and address, along with internal and external property images. Now, according to the security researcher who discovered this issue, the vulnerability would basically would offer would-be burglars not only a blueprint to hundreds of thousands of homes, but also essentially a shopping list, since there are pictures of inside the house. So you see, I have a Picasso on the wall and I'm putting it in inventory time. You might want to go rob me of my Picasso. For the record, I don't have one. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the electronic Waveform Lab. They got hit on April 11th of 2020 with ransomware. Names, addresses, diagnosis codes, and limited treatment information was apparently exposed by electronic Waveform Lab, or rather their attackers. And I don't know much more about it at this time, but obviously if it develops, I will let you know. Moving on, let's talk about the country of Armenia, because apparently, according to Armenian news, Azerbaijani hackers have published data of about 3,500 Armenian citizens, and these are specifically citizens that have been infected with COVID-19 or coronavirus, and so that's obviously a very serious issue. The health database of Armenia was apparently compromised, and they are pointing the finger at Azerbaijani hackers. So heads up if you're in Armenia and you know somebody with COVID-19 or you've had it yourself. Moving on, let's head back to the United States and talk about the University of Missouri healthcare system. They just disclosed a data breach that occurred in September of 2019. Now, the email accounts of some students who had been seen by their healthcare system basically were accessed without authorization. These email accounts included things like patients' names, dates of birth, medical record numbers, health insurance information, and limited treatment and or clinical information such as diagnostic or medication information. And for a small number of individuals, social security numbers were exposed as well. The unauthorized access began on September 19th of 2019, and it has since been shut down. Hopefully, they are going to take precautions and tighten up their systems. And if you have anything to do with the University of Missouri healthcare system, heads up to you. Moving on. Let's talk about San Beda University, or SBU, out of the Philippines. A still unidentified attacker has infiltrated the online student portal of SBU, gaining access to personal information and social media passwords of thousands of students, and apparently then released them online. I don't know if it was for money or for public, but heads up, SBU students. I don't have much more information at that point, but when I do, I'll let you know. Moving on, let's head on down to South Africa and talk about Post Bank. Post Bank is having to replace about 12 million bank cards or credit cards at the cost of basically 1 million rand, which is the equivalent of 58.7 million US dollars, after a major security breach that exposed the personal data of millions of social grant beneficiaries and other account holders got hit. Now, the report says that the breach resulted from the printing of the bank's encrypted master key in plain, unencrypted digital language at the Post Bank's old data center, apparently in Pretoria. Now, according to a number of internal Post Bank reports, the master key was then stolen by employees. So that's obviously a very serious issue. Excuse me. And if they had more control, I guarantee you the controls that they would have put in place would be a lot less than 1 billion rand or 58.7 million US. That's a huge issue. Moving on, let's head back to the United States and talk about Genworth Financial. This is a Fortune 500 mortgage and long-term care insurer, and they disclosed a data breach after an unauthorized party gained access to insurance agents' online accounts using compromised login credentials. The attackers were able to access online documents that contain some of the following information in various combinations. So we are looking at name, address, age, gender, date of birth, financial information, social security numbers, and signatures, interestingly enough, when you electronically sign documents, or snapshots of documents, it could be as well. So heads up, if you have an account with Genworth Financial, you may want to check into that. And finally, and I found this to be rather interesting as well for what it potentially exposes, we need to talk about a company called Tait, T-A-I-T. They're apparently a live events solution provider, and they had a data breach that was discovered on April 6th of this year when Tait noticed that an unauthorized party gained access to one of its company's servers and the email account of several of its employees. What was affected was names, addresses, email addresses, dates of birth, social security numbers, and financial account information, not to mention the fact of just the regular correspondence. And this is why this one's interesting, because here's the kicker in terms of that correspondence. Tait, and I quote, worked on 17 of the top 20 highest grossing concert tours of all time and has a client roster that includes NASA, which this would be the third vendor breach they've had disclosed in the last couple of weeks, as well as Disney, Universal, Nike, Metallica, U2, Microsoft, MTV, the Olympics, Eurovision, the Rolling Stones, AC/DC, and many others, which means that some kind of attacker could potentially be getting into this information and have direct and personal knowledge of, let's say, the entire band of U2. You want Bono's home phone number, you might now be able to have it thanks to this data breach, not to mention NASA or the Olympics, of all things, which is a massive, massive event, as well as Eurovision and all of that. So those are your breaches of the week. It's been absolutely another crazy week, but this video has not been long. I have to say, it's not as long as the videos have been in the last few weeks to a month or so, thanks to the coronavirus, and hopefully that trend will continue to go down. I would love to get a breaches of the week video under 5 minutes, or eventually have to report that there are no breaches for breaches of the week, but quite frankly, I think that's a pipe dream. Hopefully, we're just trending down. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.